Hello, welcome to Shad Life. Today I'm going to talk about what makes this an almost $4,000 bike and that a $700 bike. When you look at both of them, you just would assume they're both equal. Let's first talk about the frames, the most important part of the bike, the core of the bike. This is quad-butted tubing, meaning it's got 4 different thicknesses internally to determine flex, save weight, all that stuff. It's even got different tube diameters. It's thicker here, gets thinner here, things like that for more welding surface. Lots of thought went into this frame and its design. You can see how the seat tube is curved to tuck in the rear wheel, things like that. This frame alone costs more than that entire bike. It's $1,000 for an Esker Japhy frame. This frame, not so much. It's just going to be straight gauge tubing. They do have hydroformed aluminum, which is actually super easy to manufacture. You'll notice they actually don't form all one piece back here. They weld these things together, things like that. It's a good frame, but it's not even close to what that frame is as far as quality goes. So this frame is going to have really good ride compliance because it's designed to ride and function smoothly. Now we get into the fork. Again, this fork is almost $1,000. It's like $900 and something dollars, more than that entire bike. This has high speed, low speed compression. It's got rebound. It's got air preload, which is going to be lighter. And then this adjustment knob actually works like granularly, so I can go to full open, and as I move it, it makes the fork stiffer, but then I can go all the way and lock it out. But it actually has granular function and feels different for every click, unlike that fork where it just basically goes all the way open and all the way off. And that's a spring fork, doesn't have as much adjustment capabilities. This also has positive and negative air pressure, so I can set it up so it has a little bit of compliance off the top for smoother small bump compliance and things like that. Very amazing fork, much sturdier built and things like that. And it's a 110 boost through axle design versus 100 millimeter quick release. The through axle is going to be a lot stiffer, reduced flex, things like that. So a much better design, better functioning fork, something I can fine tune just for me. So the frame and fork on this bike, we've already more than doubled this bike in cost. So I actually am gonna say that these bikes, it's interesting, they both have the same shifter. They both have Shimano Dior level 12-speed shifter. I've given that bike's drivetrain the most praise out of that whole bike. I'm super impressed with the drivetrain because it's Shimano Dior rear derailleur, a 12-speed cassette, all of that. Come over here, same shifter, but then you get down to here, you get to the XT level rear derailleur. Same kind of clutch mechanism and so on and so forth, but it has an actual Shimano cassette, which is going to function a little bit better, a little bit smoother than the Sun one, although the Sun cassette's pretty good. So not a lot of gain here, although you do get a much better manufactured, this is aluminum, and it's a stiffer, sturdier derailleur made to break away if you hit it on something, things like that. But as far as shift quality goes, these bikes are going to be about the same. The biggest thing this is going to do is save weight. There is a big difference in crankset though. This has an aluminum chain ring. The cranks are actually they look solid, but they're actually not. They're hollow, they're manufactured super high tolerances, much lighter weight, so on and so forth. Let's look at these cranks. You'll notice that they're kind of this structure on the back and stuff, and this is generally what you'll find in less expensive cranks. They do this to save some weight, but this is just a solid crank, a lot heavier, although I do like this crank set as far as like it's going to be reliable. It doesn't look like you can change out the chainring on here. It is a steel chainring, so this is going to be a much heavier crank and not be as stiff. Brake levers. I love these Shimano XT levers. See how small they are? And if you look, I don't have to move them way in, and I get my one finger on there. They work really well. Super light touch, lots of modulation. The levers here are probably my favorite levers of all mountain bike levers. And then we get dual piston hydraulic brakes. Really nice. Over here, you've probably heard me complain about these big no-name brand levers. It's kind of a squishy feel. It's like, you know, really soggy, not very crisp. I don't like these levers. The brakes work decently, but not nearly as good as those brakes. And these are just some single piston, again, no name brand, unless I can get in there and see. I still don't see a name brand on here anywhere. Brakes, they work okay, but they're just not as awesome. Lower end, lower quality rotors also. These are ice rotors that are designed to dissipate heat, so on and so forth. Stem and handlebars, a much nicer, higher quality stem. Nice race face turbine handlebar. This handlebar is going to be a lot lighter. I noticed when I was building this bike that the handlebars felt really heavy, and these are super light. Like you can hardly feel them in there. Super stiff. These are 35 millimeter. This is 31/8, so a much bigger diameter, going to be a stronger handlebar, so on and so forth. These bars aren't terrible, they're decent, and the stem isn't terrible, but weight wise they're super heavy compared to what's on this bike, and this stuff's going to be stronger over here. So really like that. The grips are actually true lock-on grips, super soft compound. Again, these grips aren't terrible, but they're not as soft of a compound, and they're not lock-on, which means if you sweat or they get moisture in there, they're going to start twisting on the handlebars, so on and so forth. So the cockpit is a lot nicer. And probably the thing I like more than anything is this bike comes with a dropper. There's the dropper lever, and there's the dropper post. That bike, no dropper. In fact, the frame isn't even dropper compatible, so if I want to put a dropper on aftermarket, I have to go with an externally routed dropper, or a dropper with the little lever that's underneath the seat, which isn't ideal, but I like it. The frame is dropper compatible. Here you can see how the cable goes into the seat tube, so its mechanism is underneath. So dropper post is absolutely mandatory, in my opinion, on a mountain bike. And finally, the wheels. These are Industry 9 wheels and hubs. They're going to have more engagements. They're going to be sealed cartridge bearing, and so on and so forth. They're going to be a lot lighter weight, and they're definitely wider. Much nicer wheels. Front, same thing. And again, this bike has 110 15 by 15 millimeter boost through axle in the front, 112 by 148 millimeter boost rear axle, and so the wheels are super dialed here. The tires are super nice. These are trail spec tires. They're going to be a lot lighter weight, things like that. They're going to have compounds that give more traction, as where these tires are going to be decent. They're definitely good tires, and they're actually the same brand, but if you notice, you don't see all the extras on those tires. So this is going to be a lower level tire than this one, but these tires are good. That's another plus on this bike, is they put good tires on it. And then I already talked about the drivetrain being really good. Seat, oh, this is a stone. It's a rock. This seat, not a whole lot more thickness, but it's just softer, more compliant, much more comfortable saddle. Shape is actually better. It's got the channel down the middle to reduce pressure where you need pressure reduced, things like that. So if you're wondering why this bike's $4,000 and that bike's $700, that's why. So is it worth it to spend $4,000 on a bike over $700? Well, for me it is. I like high quality stuff. I like stuff that works, super reliable, so on and so forth. I haven't gotten that bike out on dirt. I mean, it will be a great entry-level bike and so on and so forth. That's an XC bike. This is a trail bike. So this is going to be more designed for a lot more aggressive, gnarly terrain. That bike is not. So the geometry is going to be different. So I didn't talk about geometry. I'm just talking about components and overall quality. The thing about an XC bike is that bike, being an XC bike, should weigh probably 5 pounds less than this bike if you were to go equal cost. So if you bought a $4,000 XC bike, it would be really light, probably even more than 5 pounds lighter than this bike, right? But it's not. That bike's actually probably about a half a pound heavier than this bike. So, and an XC bike is supposed to be lighter than a trail bike. This bike is heavy because it's designed to take on some serious stuff. Like, I can send it on this bike and not have to worry about anything. That bike, not so much. So a cross-country race bike should be a lot lighter than that one is, but because that's a $700 bike, it's actually quite heavy because it's got heavy components and things like that. When you really get serious about riding and you know you're going to go out and do some serious epic stuff and you're going to ride your bike super hard and so on and so forth, you just want your equipment to be really good, and you got to spend money to do that. If you're just getting into the sport and you want to see what it's like and so on and so forth, by all means, don't go out and spend $4,000 for your first bike. Or if you just can't afford a $4,000 bike, which a lot of people can't, right? Then, you know, by all means, get something that will do the job fairly well so you can get into the sport and enjoy life on two wheels. Like, nobody should criticize anyone that buys a less expensive bike, especially somebody who's a full-on bike nerd like me, who loves to ride these kind of bikes. So there is no judgment here. I just want you to be informed that why a bike would cost more than other, because if you just were to look at these two bikes, somebody would say, why would anybody pay $4,000 for this bike over here? Well, now you have the answer. I appreciate your support for my channel. Please like and subscribe. Peace.